up today, more heavy rain is forecast to lash Korea as a monsoon front straddles the peninsula. Up to 300 millimeters could be dumped on the central region over the next 24 hours. President Park Geun-hye urges the government to set Korea apart from the rest by engaging in free and open trade at a time of growing protectionism. First, Saudi Arabia is rocked by 3 suicide bombings in a single day. An attacker even targets one of Islam's holiest sites in Medina. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, July 5th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to start this morning with a weather update. Most of Korea's central region is dry at this early hour, but monsoon rains are expected to return later in the day, and they'll be even stronger than yesterday. Heavy rain advisories remain in effect across much of the country, with some areas already experiencing downpours. Showers are expected to spread nationwide throughout the day and get stronger. Korea's central region will see up to 300 millimeters of rain, while other areas are forecast to see up to 80 millimeters through Wednesday. There will also be strong gusty winds and thunder and lightning in some areas, so take the necessary precautions while outside and be extra careful if you have to drive somewhere. Adding to the weather woes, Typhoon Nepatak is forecast to move toward Taiwan by Friday and could indirectly influence Korea over the weekend. President Park Geun-hye has reiterated her call for North Korea to end its aggressions against the South and the rest of the region. At a cabinet meeting Monday, the president also had some advice for the nation's exporters. Song Ji-son has more.
President Park said Korea must seek to foster future growth engines and explore new markets overseas, despite unfavorable conditions both at home and abroad, like the recent effect of Brexit on global financial markets.
세계적인 보호 무역주의와 신고립주의 추세를 오히려 우리가 대외 지향적인 개방 정책의 중심 국가로 자리 잡는 기회로 만들어야 하겠습니다.
Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Monday, President Park added that restructuring and reforms must go on and encouraged people to spend their summer vacations in Korea to boost domestic consumption and economic sentiment. The president also touched on North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly last week, where North Korean leader Kim Jong-un added another title to cement his leadership. She said Pyongyang's use of nuclear and missile threats to solidify the regime will never succeed.
오히려 국제사회의 더욱 강력한 제재만을 가져와서 결국 정권도 안정되지 못할 것이라는 점을 북한 정권은 깨달아야 할 것입니다.
President Park also commented on the recent terror attack in Bangladesh, saying that there are no safe havens and asked her cabinet members to do all they can to protect the public. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye will make the short flight to Mongolia next week for a 5-day trip aimed at boosting bilateral ties. She'll attend the Asia-Europe meeting and hold summit talks with her Mongolian counterpart. Han Da-eun reports.
Partnership for the future through connectivity. That's the theme for this year's Asia-Europe meeting, celebrating 20 years of cooperation between the two continents. President Park Geun-hye will take off for the summit, which will be the first multilateral meeting to be held after Britain voted to leave the European Union next Thursday. She's one of the more than 50 leaders set to fly to Ulaanbaatar, setting the stage for discussions on ways to counter the situation. As a founding member of the summit, Seoul will seek to cement its role in the region and garner support for efforts to denuclearize North Korea. President Park will also sit down with Mongolian President Geunhye Alvadorj for summit talks aimed at upgrading their comprehensive partnership. They will also discuss ways to enhance cooperation in energy, infrastructure, and exchanges of culture and people in a mutually beneficial way. Mongolia has the world's second largest copper reserves and is fourth in coal. The resource-rich country also successfully switched to capitalism from socialism through a democratic movement in the 90s. And President George showed support for denuclearizing North Korea during his recent visit to Seoul in May. President Park will also hold a business forum to link Korean entrepreneurs with local buyers and will meet with Koreans who live in Mongolia before flying back to Seoul on July 18th. 한다은, Arirang News.
Now, the President of Switzerland will visit Seoul next Wednesday for summit talks with President Park Geunhye. Officials say Johann Schneider-Ammann and President Park will seek to further upgrade the two sides' partnership in the creative economy by expanding political cooperation in trade, science and ICT. They'll also cover global issues, including North Korea and European issues. Schneider-Ammann will become the first Swiss leader to visit Korea since the two countries established diplomatic ties in 1963. Now, there has been an explosion in the Saudi Arabian city of Medina. Local media say a suicide bomber detonated his device near the Prophet's Mosque, one of the holiest sites in Islam. The explosion happened as security officers were breaking their Ramadan fast. Saudi television showed video of the fire in a car park with at least one body nearby. Some reports say 4 people were killed in that blast. There's been no comment, however, from the Saudi authorities about the incident. 2 other suicide attacks were also reported on Monday, but neither of them killed anyone apart from the bombers. No group has claimed responsibility for the attacks, but Saudi Arabia has been targeted by the Islamic State militant group over the past couple of years. Back here in Korea, and lawmakers are gearing up for the second and final day of questioning the country's government officials. Tuesday's session will be centred around non-economic issues such as national security, but on Monday the topic was the economy and it got pretty heated, as our Lee Min-young reports.
The first interpellation session of the 20th National Assembly kicked off on Monday morning, with government officials facing questions from lawmakers over the next 2 days. On Monday, lawmakers mainly focused on economic policy, and the ruling and opposition parties collided over the idea of a corporate tax hike. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea advocated for a higher corporate tax rate, saying it is the government's responsibility to use the revenue for vulnerable populations. It proposed a bill to push the corporate tax rate up to 25% from 22% for companies with a tax base above $43 million.
The trickle-down effect of the government's export policy, focusing on conglomerates, has reached its limit. Only if the society shares the fruits of growth is continuous job creation and further economic growth possible.
The ruling Saenuri Party disagreed, saying it's not the right time and it will only burden the economy amid the current global market uncertainties.
It's the people who will be shouldering all the burden of raising corporate tax, not the companies, because they will cut salaries to pay the taxes.
Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-ahn sided with the ruling party, saying the government will avoid tax hikes that place a burden on people and businesses. Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho also expressed a negative view of the idea, saying that a corporate tax hike would hamper foreign investment. In the realm of foreign exchange policy, Representative Lee Jong-gu of the ruling party called for a managed floating exchange rate system like China, saying the market turbulence following Britain's decision to leave the European Union could trigger a currency war. Prime Minister Hwang said the government is reviewing a system that would allow the government to be more involved in rate settings. The government was also grilled over allegations that it was heavily involved in the process of providing government funding to normalize Daewoo Shipbuilding and marine engineering, even though it knew the company was facing allegations of accounting fraud. The interpellation session will continue on Tuesday with non-economic issues on the agenda. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
The top diplomats of the two Koreas could cross paths soon at an upcoming multilateral forum in Southeast Asia. Seoul is playing its cards close to its chest, as it has essentially severed communication with Pyongyang since the North's nuclear missile provocations early this year. Geunhye reports.
The 23rd ASEAN Regional Forum, a multilateral gathering in the Asia-Pacific region being held in Laos this year, could become the first venue for an encounter between South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his North Korean counterpart Lee Yong-ho. It's expected that Lee will appear at the yearly forum as it's the only multilateral security forum that North Korea is part of and attends regularly. If he does, it will mark his international debut after he took over for former Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong in May. Seoul's government, however, has been cautious in making comments on the possibility of a meeting.
We heard about Minister Ri Yong-ho's participation through the media, and there are lots of possibilities, but we need to observe the situation. North Korea's provocations are continuing, and there's a global consensus on denuclearizing North Korea. That's why we have to engage in the ASEAN Regional Forum based on that.
Lee's participation has drawn a great deal of attention as the international condemnation and sanctions on Pyongyang have increased since its fourth nuclear test and string of missile launches earlier this year. Officials say Lee has a lot of experience in dialogue with the U.S. and other nations. What's also notable about the meeting is that all the members of the long-stalled six-party denuclearization talks, South Korea, the U.S., China, Japan, Russia, and North Korea, are among the 27 participating countries. However, some say the North Korea issue might be overshadowed by discussions on the South China Sea dispute, which involves China and several ASEAN or Association of Southeast Asian Nations members. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
South Korea and Britain have agreed to jointly monitor economic uncertainties and provide mutual assistance on North Korean issues. Seoul's foreign ministry says Deputy Foreign Minister Kim Hyung-jin held talks in London on Monday with his British counterpart Hugo Swire on the Brexit decision. The two sides confirmed their positions to minimise the economic losses that could be caused by Britain's decision to leave the EU and to work together in dealing with North Korea's nuclear and humanitarian problems. The meeting was the first high-ranking face-to-face discussion between the two countries since the June 23rd referendum. On Tuesday, Kim will travel to Austria to attend a seminar with the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting of new champions, which wrapped up last week in China, brought together some of the world's leading innovators and startups challenging traditional businesses. One sector benefiting the most from these new technologies is finance. Kwon Jung-ho reports.
Financial technologies, or Fintech for short, has changed the way people use financial services. Instead of walking to a bank, people can now use their smartphones or go online. Investments in the industry rose 75% on year in 2015, and there are no signs of the growth slowing down. And behind this upward trend are new startups and innovators challenging the traditional banking models.
Consumers are very smart. Consumers, when they see something which is so much better and so different, they really make a jump for it.
Taavet Hinrkus is the co-founder and CEO of TransferWise. It's a peer-to-peer currency exchange service that matches payments with those going the opposite direction. So money essentially doesn't cross borders, and therefore it's cheaper than banks and other services such as Western Union and PayPal. In just 5 short years, it now handles transactions worth over $750 million a month, and the company has been valued at just over $1 billion.
I don't think the word fintech existed then. So I think we've been kind of part of defining the genre fintech, but really I don't think consumers care about fintech. Consumers care about a better experience, cheaper, faster, more convenient.
Have the banks changed the way they do things? Like, have they reacted to what your company's been doing?
I think not that much yet, but it really comes back to kind of a deficiency in their business model. But that re-engineering process is something which is very painful to do in an organization which has thousands of branches, tens of thousands of people, and existing shareholders who are used to a profitable company.
Taavet reckons that along with technological innovations, it was also the 2008 financial crisis that led to people losing trust in traditional banking services and look for alternative solutions.
While we thought that banks were looking after us, they really only cared about their own interests. So We've seen a steady stream of new fintech companies coming in every vertical of banking since the financial crisis. So,
and what lays ahead in the future of fintech?
Do you think it will last, this fintech revolution? Do you think banks will catch up or even take over some of these?
I think we'll see a future where it's really hard to distinguish between a conventional bank and a fintech disruptor. As in every other industry, we're seeing that technology comes and takes over and becomes the center of it. Everything will be technology enabled. The same thing will happen in banking and finance.
Kwon Jang-woo, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next scheduled bulletin coming up at 10 a.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.